Ho, ho, ho. Welcome to the third episode of Super League 360, the podcast all about British Rugby League stuff. My name is Lee Addison.
And my name is John Davidson.
John, very disappointed in you. I saw that you got an early Christmas present. You had a microphone. And you were playing with your thing before we press record, and it's not working.
No, I'm not the most tech savvy of individuals. So we'll get there eventually. We got lots of episodes to come. So
and I'm in the Christmas spirit, John, and inspired by you last time with your Bar Humbug T-shirt on, and you've just turned up in army colours.
Yeah, I'm just matching your red with a bit of green, a bit of festive green.
John's in army fatigues. Lee Addison is dressed as Father Christmas. Well, this pod obviously has a British Rugby League lean, and more specifically Super League, but we've not done one podcast yet of the two, and this third will fit that same theme. We need to do some politics. We need to do some Rugby League politics because we're going all sorts of directions, and what does shock me at the moment is that there's still been nothing positive about the World Cup next year in terms of England's preparations. All that's been in the news is Sean Wayne won't get a warm-up game. That's indeed if Sean Wayne is the coach.
Yeah, there's not really been much news or talk about that.
No.
I mean, I think there's some speculation that he might get the axe, but in terms of no warm-up game, probably very few meetings together. It'll be, I guess, systems as usual. So I think expectations will be probably quite low for England at the World Cup.
We'll dedicate some time each week to the NRL as well, or each fortnight until the season starts. I guess right now, John, there's not much in the NRL sphere, is there?
No, there isn't. And to be honest, just the podcast, I'd just like to sort of express the shock and the devastation, the sadness of what happened at Bondi Beach a week and a half ago. Obviously, not rugby league related, but in Australia, and something that kind of affects the whole world. And I know at least there was a Manly fan who was killed,
right,
as well as a Northern Beaches constable who was shot in the head. I think he's in hospital recovering. But yeah, just
the photographer Peter Marr was the rugby club on the Northern Beaches there. Yes. He was their photographer. So
yeah,
awful news, awful. Yeah. I spoke to a friend who lives in Maroubra who frequents Bondi quite regularly as a suburb, and there apparently is a palpable shock, stroke, sadness, stroke, anger on the streets. And just looking at the news cycles, the news items, it's only just now starting to drop off in terms of intensity of news items. My fear is that the legal process will drag on. My fear is that there'll be a Sydney lawyer somewhere who will look to get their name in the sun and to defend this alleged. We've got to say alleged. There's plenty of pictures and videos of a man with a gun shooting plenty of people. So my fear is something like that will happen. Let's not go too far down this rabbit hole, apart from to say awful news. Anybody who has been affected by listening to this podcast, send in our love. I'm sure you agree with that, John. Also, we don't discriminate, mate, do we? So,
no, definitely not. So hopefully, thoughts and prayers and love, as you said, to everyone affected and everyone who's...
Now, I'm just going to turn off this air conditioner next to me because it sounds like a train in my earphones. Just give me a second. And then if I start sweating with my Santa hat on, I'll have to put it back on. John, you're a UK-based Australian journalist, and over the next year, well, who knows, we might be going for 10 years with this podcast, John. We might win awards and stuff. You're going to be getting some interviews for us and things like that, and scoops, aren't you?
That's the plan. Yes, that is the plan.
Where can people find you?
They can find me on X at Johnny D. Davidson, and they can find me on Facebook at John Davidson Journalist, and on Patreon at rugbyleaguehub.com long reads.
I'm a UK-born rugby league coach who's coached in Australia a long time. You can find me probably at the cricket at the moment. But also admin at rugbyleaguecoach.com.au is my email, at Rugby League Coach on socials, and rugbyleaguecoach.com.au is my website. This podcast is being aired on the Ashes Rugby League and Rugby League Coach podcast platforms for a while, but please start to switch over, please, to the Super League 360 podcast platform. What should we talk about first, Johnny? What should we talk about first? Because we're doing fortnightly at the moment, we seem to have a lot of little items. So the first one I want to talk about, and we have had a question about this from a social media person, and I'm going to leave that till the end. Then there's a reason I'm doing that. But Matt Pete, the Wigan coach, is another who's decided to come out and have a go at the speeds of the ruck in Super League. What can you tell us about that, Johnny D. Davidson?
Yeah, just to clarify, he's not come out and had a go. It was obviously a question I asked him in an interview. I asked him lots of questions, and he answered pretty honestly. It was on the back of a piece Steve Mascord did with the Catalans coach, Joel Tompkins, and the Toulouse coach, Sylvain Houlez, a couple of weeks before, and they were both adamant about how the Super League has become too defence orientated. There's too much wrestling. The rucks are too slow. There's not enough consistency in how they're policed. They're very messy. And I think anyone who watched the Ashes, particularly perhaps NRL fans who then, the first test being ref by an English ref, or just the way that the English players struggled to kind of adapt to the NRL refereeing of those second and third tests, would probably agree, and those who watch Super League would probably agree that the way the rucks are in the NRL and Super League are light years apart. Even my partner, who doesn't watch a lot of rugby league, when she sees an NRL game, sort of says, it's like a different product. It's like a different sport. So I think there is a realization from a lot of people in Super League that they need to adapt their rucks, their competition, to more how the NRL is playing if England is going to be able to match not just the Australians, but the Kiwis, the Samoans, the Tongans, and anyone else who is drawing their national team from the NRL. I think one of the issues is the consistency of how a referee polices, what is a quick ruck, what is a slow rock, what is a dominant tackle, what isn't, and why the markers aren't square, whether the 10's being policed or not. And I spoke to Ryan Carr at Castleford a week or so ago, and he was also supportive. So I think the vast majority of Super League coaches would agree with what Matt Pete was saying and what Tompkins and Houlez were saying as well.
I mean, to me, it's just been allowed to slip, because a few years ago, the rucks were twice as fast as they were in the NRL, because the referees didn't want them to be on the ground at all in any way, shape or form. So teams were doing their best to keep the attacker upright and dance with them, if you like. So it's just the way it's evolved. I'd say there's a bit more sloppiness in the game in the last 5 or 10 years. For years, the markers haven't been square in the Super League. And if you look back at the Super League Grand Final in particular, there was one period of about 5 minutes where the ref actually lost complete control of the ruck, and there was all sorts of messy things happening in and around the play of the ball. So they seem to be suffering, referees, from paralysis by analysis, forgetting some of the basics, if you ask me. And I welcome this discussion. Now, Sky are the TV rights holders for the Super League for one more year at least. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, the current 3-year deal ends at the end of 2026.
And because there's 2 extra teams tagged on to the Super League, there's an extra fixture. So there's been some conjecture pertaining to whether Sky would cover that game and for the same fee that they're paying. And all we know is that the game is going to be covered.
Yeah, so essentially, obviously, under the deal, it was for 6 games a week, a set amount of games in a year, and then Super League. Not really to anyone's knowledge why, but just decided to expand without much deliberation or without much analysis, and add in 2 more teams without much thought, apart from eliminating loot fixtures, because apparently loot fixtures are the devil. They thought we'll just add in 2 more teams. How are we going to fund them? Oh, we're not thought about that. Who's going to show them? Oh, we're not thought about it. Is the broadcaster on board? We're not thought about that. So it's a bit of a shit fight, basically, Lee. But my understanding, speaking to a few sources, is that Sky will show the games and they will pay some of the production costs, because we're looking at between $500,000 to 650,000 pounds for the year, because it's an extra game every round in 27 rounds. They will be on Sky, and Sky will pay for some of those costs, but not all of them. So there's a bit of discussion and negotiation going on. And as the RFL and Super League are not flush with cash, they're not bursting at the seams. So who pays for that is quite a big thing. I know it's been mooted before that maybe Super League would put the 7th game on, like on our league or on its own Super League Plus, on its own streaming platform, but that's not going to happen, and it will be on Sky. But it's just a bit of an ongoing saga. You would have to, I'm not a businessman, but you'd have to think that one of your key business partners make a big decision like expanding the competition without discussing them seems a bit strange and a bit odd. But maybe it's a tactic to get more money out of Sky in 12 months. Who knows?
Yeah. The Rugby Football League are looking for a new CEO and chair as we speak. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so the last Saturday, there was basically a job ad published saying that the RFL was looking for a new chair, not of the RFL, but of all 3 bodies. So it's probably a bit of a long-winded explanation, but
please do. We've got time.
So we have the RFL, which is the Rugby Football League, which is the governing body. And then within that, they have Rugby League Commercial, which is essentially a separate entity, but their commercial arm, which is in charge of things like sponsorships and TV negotiations. And then they also have Super League Europe, which is with a representative of all that, now 14, but was 12 clubs. So the RFL not only runs Super League Europe, but Super League Europe kind of runs itself. But the RFL is the governing body across all of these things. And the RFL is also in charge of the women's game and the championship and League One. So essentially, then this was, this was the speculation for months when Nigel Wood came back in, that they would realign all these bodies and try and basically get rid of some of the duplication of roles, essentially cut costs and merge them back together. So they're looking for a chairman to lead all 3 of those boards. So essentially one chairman across that, which they don't have at the moment. I think from the job ad, it's about 100 days a year, so it's not a full-time role. They didn't mention a salary, but look, they constantly do this the last 7-8 years. We've had Ralph Rimmer and Tony Sutton, so they say they're looking in a worldwide search. We're going to look at the best candidates, and then it seems to be somebody who already works the RFL. So
with a northern accent,
with a northern accent, who used to work for Bradford or Hull FC or Huddersfield. Look, I've said this for a number of years. I think there needs to be, much like Peter V'landys was in the NRL, an outsider, not someone who's come from clubland, someone who hasn't got ties to specific club owners or clubs or whatever, someone who can come in as a bit of a clean slate, fresh slate, and actually make some serious change and lead the bloody thing. So will that happen? I will not hold my breath, because I would probably be dead. But it is interesting. Also, Tony Sutton, who was Ralph Rimmer's deputy, who was the last RFL CEO. He left in October, and Abu Okoku, who was a part of Nigel Wood's review committee, was appointed interim CEO, much to the surprise of everyone, because there was no recruitment process for that. But I believe he is leaving at March. So they're not only looking for a CEO of the RFL, they're also looking for a chair of everything at the same time. So the speculation would be that Nigel Wood will leave then and go back into his hibernation. Again, he's just come back into power. Would he leave? I don't know. Nigel doesn't answer my calls or messages or emails. I wouldn't be surprised if Nigel went back to run Bradford or have an ownership stake in Bradford like he did before. But it's interesting because, maybe things will change at the very top. Maybe they won't, but maybe we'll have fresh blood.
Maybe we won't. And I think when you mentioned Peter V'landys there, the big thing that I think happened there is the game got somebody with influence.
Yes.
So who happened to like rugby league as well. And therefore, who's got influence in the UK? Well, the first name that sprung to mind for me was the Hearn family. And they approached rugby league a few years ago, I believe, or were approached by rugby league a few years ago and couldn't run for the hills fast enough, I believe. So that's a concern there.
With the Hearns, I think the offer to them was, why don't you run the Challenge Cup? The Challenge Cup's struggling. It's not what it once was. Why don't you run that? And they sort of said, well, no, we want everything. We want Super League. We want the Challenge Cup. We want everything. And I don't think, we could argue whether that would be a good thing for the game or not. It's really hard to say because the Hearns' success has come in very individualist sports, boxing, snooker. What else have they done? Darts. And they've got I'm not criticising the Hearns. They've been amazingly successful. They're very good at publicity, at driving up media rights. But also you could argue some of their, the characteristics aren't great. Getting in bed with Saudi Arabia. Is that a good thing? Personally, I don't think it is. So rugby league, as you know, Lee, in the UK, and probably more so than Australia, it's very grounded in this community roots, kind of local, it's the pride of the local community. So I don't think on the one hand you can have this big business, let's make lots of money, let's get publicity, and the same have this social impact, we're great for the community, that kind of thing. Like there's probably a bit of hypocrisy if you try and go down that path. I don't know.
Well, I agree. I understand what you're saying, but that northernness, that community feel, etc. There's a very big brand that managed to pull that off, and that's called Coronation Street, and they've pulled it off for most of the last century. So, it's all about how you package it. It's all about how you move forward with it, and it's all about how you present to the wider world. The classic case is Eddie Waring. Eddie Waring, Ray French. In rugby league, we tended to hammer these people. Ray French and Eddie Waring, God rest both their souls. I remember, particularly when I was young, most people in the adult world I spoke to didn't like Ray French as a commentator. The same with Eddie and Steve-O. We tended to criticize. And then as they retire and things start to become glossy-eyed, some people start to forget what they used to think. But I don't forget that at all. Eddie Waring in particular was moved to defend himself at one point because of the attitudes that people had to Eddie Waring's commentary. And the criticisms of Eddie Waring in particular were that he was too northern. Yet the BBC, so the establishment, and therefore so many viewers around the UK, seemed to love Eddie Waring because he must have been somebody who pulled in audiences. So I think that's what's missing in rugby league, that connection between what sells. There's nothing wrong with being northern. There's nothing wrong with being a community sport. and you can be very proud in that. But you need to package it and embrace it so that people literally enjoy you for that. And I think probably one of rugby league's problems is that it is so uncomfortable being itself. It's so uncomfortable in its own skin that just people smell that, people sniff that, and then when they do these bungles in the administration all the time, it's not poor rugby league, it's people laughing at rugby league because we're too busy killing ourselves in the process as well. So I mean, this could be a podcast on its own, mate.
Yeah, I don't want to get too deep and meaningful, but just a final point on that. I agree 100% what you're saying. It goes back to earlier this year when Billy Boston got knighted, and for those Australian listeners, Billy Boston's the first person ever, first player to be knighted for being a rugby league player. He's a Welsh guy who went to Wigan because he's black, he couldn't play, wasn't getting picked for the Welsh team because of his race, and was a legend and a hero at Wigan and scored 80 billion tries. I think he was one of the first. I think he actually first black Great British player to play in the Ashes or against Australia. He wasn't the first Great Britain player, but he was the first to go down under in the 50s and 60s. Just a legend. But speaking of Chris Radlinski earlier in the year when Billy was getting knighted, it was basically the kind of dichotomy of, in the UK, rugby league players that says this, modest heroes. You can't be too big for your boots. You can't be a big character. You can't be, Jake Paul, too arrogant, too Larry because we don't like
Mourinho.
Yeah, exactly. That's not our DNA. That's not our sport. So there's that kind of contradiction, I guess, that how do we make big stars? How do we make players into big stars? But then that's kind of against our ethos. So one of these things has to change, or I guess we won't have, breakout stars. And obviously in Australia, they managed to do it, but the game in England is a little bit different, as you know.
There's different interests in rugby league in Australia, though. I think because of the way it was set up in Australia, I think the gambling companies were intermingled with it. Businesses were more intermingled with it. Whereas in England, it was part of a remote community, if you like, in the north of England. It was a breakaway. But also, if you look at the way Australia is structured, rugby league basically took off in Sydney, which I think, even though it's not the capital of the country, it competes with Melbourne to be the main city of the country. It is the
biggest city. Yeah, it is the largest city.
And therefore, when you see images of Australia, people see the Sydney Opera House, they see the bridge, and not far away from there at all is rugby league, and therefore there's influence in and around Sydney. And I'm pretty sure that if this breakaway happened in London in 1895, the influence would be there, and it literally is influence. If you look at most documentaries about anything, murders or world wars or anything like that, the people that get interviewed on these things are all influential people. It's the lecturer from Cambridge or the head of this at this university or the head of that at that organization, and it's all about influence. So that's where rugby league has missed a boat. Where it probably needs to focus a lot more of its efforts are on things like getting arrested in pubs. So Jamie Peacock, there's a video of him getting arrested. Now, one thing I do want to say about Jamie Peacock, the former Great Britain Leeds, did he play for Bradford as well?
He did. I think he won at least one grand final, if not more than
forward.
Bradford.
One thing I will say, number one, I've not seen any proof that he did anything wrong. Number two, his restraint that he showed. I mean, there was nothing, he was a gentleman, basically.
He was.
So in the video, anyway. So do you know anything about this story? Because it's not really made the news, has it?
No, I got sent it by a contact, and it had been online on X for about 2 days, and it was weirdly posted by this kind of right wing anti-police kind of I don't know, pro-white kind of account, basically. That the UK is now a police state. And I contacted the West Yorkshire Police. They weren't any help. But I did had another source tell me that it was a complete misunderstanding with one of the bar staff. I think it was at a pub in Headingley that got out of hand, and that Peacock did, nothing at all. And obviously, you watch the video; it is quite a bizarre video. And as you said,
is it definitely recent?
Well, I believe so. I don't have evidence of that, but I believe so. But as you said, he was remarkably restrained. He didn't do anything wrong. I think maybe conduct of some of his friends might be a bit dubious, particularly the American woman. But look, the police looked a little bit overzealous, and Jamie, conducted himself well. So maybe a purely misunderstanding. I think when I posted it or retweeted it, I wasn't criticizing Jamie or having a go. This was out there. This was, it is news, whether people like it or not. Former, BBC personality, former Great Britain captain, probably one of the greatest British players of all time. You look in Australia. I mean, I know it's a different situation, but Wendell Saylor, that was national news last week. So
so we need more of this. Is basically what we're saying.
I'm not saying that at all. I think it's a two-pronged discussion point, Lee, in that it's a very weird thing what happened, and maybe just a complete misunderstanding. But someone's filmed it and put it online, and that just goes to show, social media and phones. I mean, how many players?
Nothing broke through like that. The cast player that was caught rimming a girl outside of Greg's.
Yeah. I had this discussion with someone the other day, and it was like, Joe Westerman is probably not got 1/10 of the profile of Jamie Vardy, but that went viral. The Sun and the Daily Mail, and everyone, him licking the asshole out of a woman next to a Greg. So, look, allegedly. Jamie didn't do anything like that.
Jamie, you were too restrained. Do more for the game. Be a bit less restrained. Thank you.
But it is perhaps a concern when something like this doesn't get run in the media, which kind of reflects on how small rugby league's profile is in the UK, I guess.
We've gone down a rabbit hole there that would be great to go into Lee's laugh, but I'm going to have to pull it back now to civilization. Cass have finally got round to doing some refurbishment and redevelopment at Cass. So what are they redeveloping? The dugouts or?
So I was there. I think it was about 2 weeks ago. And anyone who's been to Cass, the jungle, I think it's the One Bore Stadium now, which is the real name. It's not a made-up name.
Was Westerman in the jungle?
Used to be the Mendenhose jungle, but essentially there was a pitch next to it, which was a training pitch. It was more of like a kids' pitch, but that's been levelled. It's been paved. They're building a 4G there. They're building a new fan zone around the main stand, which will be, a lot better than it was. The sort of sponsors' corporate facilities have been done up. There's a gym being built as well. So it's not a stadium flattening and redevelopment, but they are doing it in stages. And anyone who's been to Cass, I think the first time I went there was in 2013. It was like going back in the 50s. And that was when, and they did fix the toilets up about 2 years ago, but when you went to the toilet, you were just literally pissing in a hole. There wasn't even a drain, and you couldn't even wash your hands. It was like going back in time. And look, it's long needed. Yeah, it's long needed, but I'm applauding Cass for doing it because
as long as they don't slash the budget.
But look, I think it's all sort of part of the new Ryan Carr era there. Obviously, he's come in as a new coach from St George Illawarra, made some decent signings. Obviously, they've struggled for a number of years, Cass. So, you look at what Lakefield have done the last 2-3 years and how they've kind of reformed the club. Hopefully Cass can follow suit and better times ahead for the Tigers.
So we've just talked about number ones there. The where you piss, and then the other ablution is the other end. So talking of a shitstorm, Salford bid for new ownership has moved on quite significantly, actually. So we last podcast we were devastated Salford had finally died, but the patient has been reborn, it seems. So this is like the Bible story. This has happened so quickly.
Well, I think there was a couple of groups who were basically waiting in the wings or working in the wings for once the club was liquidated, which obviously took a lot longer than most of us expected, to put in a bid for the license. Obviously, the business went bust, but the license for the RFL to actually run a club in their competitions was available, and there was 3 groups bidding for it. There was supposed to be a decision on the 17th, which was postponed. My understanding is basically that the council wanted too much money for the rent for the stadium, something like £200,000.
Can I just say something there?
Yeah.
If somebody wanted to own a rugby league club and they couldn't afford 200 grand, should they be owning a rugby league club?
Well, Lee, I mean, it's going to be a part-time club championship. I mean, how much, what budget do you think these clubs are on?
Well, at the end of the day, budget. I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't want to sit and turn this into a judgment of what finances people have or haven't got, but yeah. Isn't this the whole problem? People saying they could afford something when they couldn't, and
yeah, I mean,
I would have thought it was quite a good fail-safe. So 200 Gs to, let's see if you're serious, and it got rid of one bid basically straight away. I mean, why would you go in? Why would you try and own a club if you can't stump up £1/5
Oh yeah,
pound?
it's a fair point. I think there's a couple of components to this. So, is 200 grand for 13 home games and a bit of office space when you're probably only going to average between 1,500 and 2,000 fans as a part-time team in the second tier? Is that worth paying? I'd say that's probably too steep personally, but that's just my opinion. And how much money are you going to make, from these home games? Because you're not the central distribution that Salford will get. I think they all get the smallest. It's something like 50 grand or 40 grand. It's nothing. So we've got to get beyond this stage where owners are just, okay, you own a club, so you're going to lose $500,000, $1 million a year. Like, that's just not a sustainable business model. So I think the RFL was right to not rush to make a decision, particularly when there was 3 groups and one of them was linked to the previous owners. Tracy Ortega, the New Zealander, she was linked to the 2 former owners, New Zealanders. So, giving her the club the license would be, it wouldn't have gone down well in Salford, put it that way.
I don't know who put the 200 grand bill on for the stadium. Was it the council?
The council.
That's quite smart for them, because if you own a pub and you want the riffraff to stay out, you put the prices up of the meals and the drinks, and you get a better caliber of person come into the organisation. You just need to make sure you get enough coming to keep your head above water.
Yeah, it's quite a nuanced thing, Lee. As you know, like, this stadium was built. I don't think it was built for Salford, but for the Red Devils when they left the Willows for somewhere to play.
Yeah,
and obviously Sale Sharks, the rugby union team, use it too. But it's a bit of a white elephant in that the stadium is now owned fully backed by the council. But what's the council's job? Is it to make money? Is it to, provide good government for its citizens? Like, it's quite nuanced, this whole thing. And I think the club and the stadium have become kind of political footballs, for lack of a pun, for the council, for the Labor Party, as, we want to keep the sport alive. It's a bit of a vote getting thing as well. So it's quite a complicated situation. But to try and sum it up, Mason Caton Brown's bid He was a former Salford player. He has got the nod, so it's him, a couple of local Salford businessmen. They seem to have the support of a number of ex-Salford players who were on the roster last year. I'm speaking to Mason tomorrow, so hopefully I'll have a story out and find out more. But I think out of the three bids, the other one was the Chris Irwin bid, who was obviously briefly the CEO under Curtis Brown and Syka Lely. Chris Irwin was also the one who tried to set up Manchester Rangers a decade or so ago. I think the Mason Carlton Brown one seems to me the most sustainable, logical, the smart decision. And I interviewed Mason a couple of weeks ago, and one of the smart things I think that they did, that they came out very publicly with who was involved. They weren't trying to hide anything. They did a lot of interviews, and they were upfront and honest. And wouldn't that be something that we'd like to see more of in rugby league, Lee? People being upfront.
Don't be silly, John. Don't be silly. Yeah. I while you were pontificating there, John, I was looking for some NRL news, and the only NRL news I found on the Daily Telegraph is that Conor McGregor had a rugby league guest at his wedding.
Pat Richards. I followed Pat Richards on Instagram, and I saw that, and I know obviously Pat Richards has got Irish ancestry. He played for Ireland, so he must either know McGregor's wife or him. But yeah, I mean, Conor's not got the best public rap, has he, with the old rape case and everything?
But I will say this: we're looking for coverage for the game. We need more. We need more weddings like this.
I've got two words for you: Zach Lomax.
Yeah, there's him too. Yeah.
Well, don't you think? I mean, what a
hang on. I've got another big news item first. Cowboys coach Todd Payton has decided they're going on the piss for 48 hours before they start training in Vegas. That's the other news item. Just letting you know. Thank you. Sorry, John, I disturbed you.
No, Zach Lomax, I mean, apart from the bonehead decision to tear up his Parramatta contract to go to R360, but surely if you're Perth Bears, I mean, I think Rugby Australia and the Wallabies, I mean, they'd be keen to have him. He'd walk into the Wallabies, but surely Perth, you would want to make him your marquee signing, wouldn't you? Because he's one of the best wingers in the world.
He struggles defensively sometimes. But he's better than nobody. He's better than green grass and fresh air.
You and your negative analysis.
Hey? What did you say?
I said you and your negative analysis about.
Oh, what? I'm going to have a go. Negative? No, it's called accountability.
I'm joking. No, but I just think, look, he's available, and the same with Pappenhausen. Like, there's your fullback, there's your winger. You've got grand final winner. You've got someone who's played Origin.
I genuinely feel like Pappenhausen once a year off the game at least, though, from the vibes. My point I want to bring up about the NRL news, John, and you'll be very cognizant of this. In Australia, there's a couple of big newspapers, basically, that cover rugby league.
Yeah.
And 10, 15 years ago, when the big hitting journalists went on their summer holidays, there'd be some junior staff writers that would want to make a name for themselves while they were away and would hunt for news and get some news. Now what we have is when those big writers have their summer holidays, nobody's really hunting for things underneath. So we have a news issue because, you know, whether we like it or not, our news cycles are still influenced by the legacy mastheads, if you like. Now, what I have recommended for a few years to help this is an NRL trade window. So the only signing news we're getting at the minute is Billy Bloggs, who's had more clubs than Tiger Woods, has now got another club and is moving to this place, basically. And there's been no major signings because they get done in the year, a year ahead of when they move. So I would love to see a trade window where no trades can happen until after the international season. So all trades have to happen between, I don't know, November 16 and February 28, something like that. all year we can speculate about what's happening. I think the Daly Cherry Evans one was a perfect example. We all thought Daly Cherry Evans was going to the Roosters. Some journalists really pinned their hat on that one, or stuck their hat on that one. Others didn't. So we were genuinely, somebody else a bit later even said that it might be off. The Roosters might be balking. And then eventually they actually announced him and sent a picture out. I mean, it lasted 10 months. And this is a perfect example of what the trade window could do.
Mm.
And
no, I like your idea. I like the idea of a trade window.
Yeah, make me in charge. What's Johnny's jab this week? Do you remember last time you had two and you went, no, I'll save this one. I went, Johnny, do it now.
No, I can't remember what I
knew you wouldn't. I knew you wouldn't. What's Johnny's jab?
I've got a new one. Just dealing with club officials and media managers. I've had a few funny interactions recently. I think there was one, and I won't name anyone specifically, but there was one where it was like, how dare you kind of report the club's news? That's up for the club to do, which kind of just, they obviously don't understand the role of the media at all. And then there's the other one who I've been trying to interview a new employee for probably about 3.5 weeks and playing this kind of email tag game, which has now ended nowhere because the guy's on holiday for Christmas. What's the other one? Yeah, the other one I just had, I think it was over a specific tweet that I made. I didn't like the criticism, which I then responded with explaining why the criticism was valid. But, yeah, it is funny, particularly in the UK, I think, there really is this sort of lack of understanding of what is the role of the media, or what journalists are trying to do, what their job is. And obviously I understand, like, it's often, in competition or even combative with the clubs and with the sport. They've got things that they don't want out there. Journalists are trying to break news. They're trying to write interesting stories. It's not all negative. Sometimes it's quite positive. It's, you've signed this wonderful player, we'd like to profile him. Yeah. But they want to, and more they want to have their exclusive on their website or on their Twitter and have the first interview. And they just don't want to get out. Actually, one club was funny. It was like, oh, we've signed this guy from Australia, and it's like, oh, it'd be great to interview him. He's like, well, he's not here for a few weeks, and we'll let him get settled in. It's kind of like, well, I think they've got phones in Australia. I think they've got internet. This player's a veteran. I think you can probably handle a 10-minute phone call with me. But this is where we're at, Lee. They don't understand.
Well, they don't understand. I mean, I've just given a perfect example about DCE. I mean, the media were all over it for 8 months, but the Roosters just delayed when they announced it. But the Roosters maintained control, really.
The difference is, Lee, though, the DCE one, how did that kind of news effectively come out? Well, DCE made the decision to go on 100% footy himself without the club's knowledge, basically. He knew his own value and his own voice, and he used it to shape the narrative. Yeah. And then Manly tried to shape their own narrative by ringing into NRL 360 Live and making an offer. Tony Mestrove made an offer. So that's clubs and players understanding the role and the power of the media. While one thing I think that's also happened too, and I see this a lot in Australia now, and I definitely saw it in England, is when a little bit of profile comes, people grow a few inches and they try and talk themselves up. So I find this a lot in the lower levels of the NRL and the lower levels of NRL clubs and NRL land and international land. People like to pretend things are bigger than they are. Yeah. So, for example, somebody who is the head trainer of an NRL club's development side, right, will talk to people. And when I say head trainer, I don't mean head coach. I mean the yellow shirt person or whatever. They would talk to people and talk themselves up and talk up their role in society.
Okay, so there's a desperation to act bigger than you technically are. And I've seen that quite a lot. At the same time, there's another side to that. And so with the people who earn a little bit more money out of the game, some of them actually start acting a little bit diva-ish because they think, well, Jennifer Lopez can decide when she talks to BBC or not, or I'll just copy what Donald Trump does and blah, blah, blah. But there's a very big difference. Donald Trump gets out of bed and gets millions of comments about that, just organically. Rugby League organically gets 3/5 of Fanny Adams. So we have to generate interest. And therefore, we need to be accessible, warts and all. And that's what the game doesn't... Or it used to understand that. It used to understand that and did really well. And then we've completely lost all direction by all accounts. What you told me about the differences between the English and Australian rugby league players in the Test series was quite alarming, really, that they'd not received anything remotely like the same level of training or attention to, listen, these guys are basically making you a bit more famous.
Yeah. And I think that probably comes down to media training and education as well. I'm not blaming individual players because the vast majority of players are great to speak to, but I don't think they've probably been educated about the value or the role that the media plays and how you can use it to your benefit. I always remember I had Terry O'Connor on a podcast interview during COVID, and he was saying how he got his TV job was generally just chatting to journalists after, training, whatever, after games, being accessible. The media manager would come around and say, it might have been you, come around and say, so-and-so needs someone to talk to. Who wants to do it? And most players would run a mile, but he'd always do it.
Yeah, there was always a few players, and Terry was one of the easiest to...
And you build up, don't you? You build up relationships, you build up confidence, you build up a profile, and it's win-win on both sides. It's not hard to understand. It's not a particularly difficult concept, but
no,
in the UK, in rugby league, it seems like a lot of people struggle with it.
And when you build up relationships, you can do a little bit of you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours, and then 100%. Then journalists will look after you.
Yeah, I mean that is part of the game.
Yeah,
that's. And look, there's no one. It's very different, perhaps, to the Australian media, but in the UK rugby league media, there's not really anyone who's going to burn you or absolutely smash you like you get in the NRL. It's just a very different beast. I think it's a lot fairer, and obviously there's a lot less coverage and it's a lot less intense, and there's less boots on the ground, but there's not really a lot for players to be afraid of in that way, or clubs, but there's still a very protectionist attitude, and as long as that continues, then the game's never really going to grow and thrive.
One player, you don't have to name them, and one coach that's fallen out with you about something, and you've just got to explain the something, not the person. Like something that's just ridiculous. Why they've fallen out with you?
I've not had too many in terms of actually players. I can't think of a player issue. I've had the occasional coach, but yeah, the vast majority of people I think are quite good to deal with.
Well, there was one coach who took particular attention to you because you were one of the first to say he probably should get sacked from his job. Not very good at it.
Yeah, I mean, that particular coach was upset about a sarcastic tweet that I posted, which I did try and explain, but wasn't kind of willing to listen and understand. That's okay. Look, I'm sure it's the same when you're coaching, Lee, and you're coaching against teams or you're coaching your own players, and sometimes you have disagreements where you fall out with people. That's all part of it, and I understand that. I have no problem with that. I generally... And there's been lots of times I've done the wrong thing and I've put my hand up and apologised because we're all human and we all make mistakes. But the vast majority of people, you can explain things and, they know where you're coming from. But yeah.
Well, you're just an Australian prick in England, John.
But I am enjoying the Ashes. I am enjoying the.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. Funny you mentioned that because Lee's laughed this week.
Is the English cricket team.
The delightful Isha Gua said on Fox as Josh Tong was either batting and Head was bowling or vice versa, said this, quote, "This could be a good battle between Tong and Head." And then when Head came on to bowl again, she said, "Time for Head again," quote unquote. And this is while she was down under. So this made me think, what's happened in rugby league over the years in terms of funny commentary? Can you think of anything off the top of the old Chrome Dome?
I can't think of specific commentary, but I do remember when you mentioned Tongue, I do remember some great fan signs when Alan Tongue and Willie Mason, it was like, our tongue's better than your Willie, or there was something equivalent to that. Good old Alan Tongue, who played for the Raiders back in the day. But we're in a very PC world, I think, Lee. Oh, yeah. I think the ability for some people to take a joke is really I actually, just to segue back to the Jamie Peacock video, I think I wrote that he'd been put in a paddy wagon and someone took offence at that. Right. I don't know, someone with Irish heritage, but it was, it's 2025, educate yourself. I didn't know that was such an offensive word. Yeah. As someone with Irish heritage, maybe I should have, beat myself up about that. I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, cricket's good for these things. Again, cricket's a better known sport around the world than rugby league, so we should pay some attention. I mean, another one in cricket that's quite famous was the bowlers holding the batsman's willy, which was Michael Holding bowling to Peter Willie. Were you aware of that one?
No, I haven't heard that one.
And then there was another one on Test Match Special where Ian Botham in the early 90s was playing against the West Indies. And he tried to play a hook shot or something similar, lost balance, and his legs basically knocked the stump over. And the commentator basically said Botham couldn't get his leg over. And the place just fell into hysterics. Rugby league ones, there's a good one, Ray French. He got the words hooker and forward mixed up. This was early in his career, and somebody made a break, and he goes, "Oh, we can run this fucker." A few others. Rabbits Warren did this on purpose, no doubt. The Gus Gould was trying to explain the escort rule to him and the term that had come up in rugby league, and Rabs goes, "It's a long time since I've had an escort, Gus." Danganane, I don't know what year this was, but Newcastle sort of scrambled to score a try against St. George, and it sounded like he said Newcastle on the verge of fucking it up there, but he's later said he said mucking it up. So
that was this year.
Was it?
I watched that clip over and over again. He definitely sounds like he said fucking it up.
Right,
it pretty
I mean, I think the greatest British rugby league commentator in history was old mate from Castleford, who, I mean, for those who don't know, a lot of rugby league coverage,
Mick Morgan,
before Sky really became involved, there was something called Micron Video, and basically somebody used to go and bring a camera to a game and grab somebody. Your friend Phil Kaplan was a big commentator on there. I know I commentated once with him when Salford played Leeds. They were even letting me do it. And they were just pulling in commentators from everywhere. And this has gone viral now, or rugby league equivalent of viral was Morgan, the whole "I can't speak, bottleless get Campbell" when when Kelvin Skerritt took somebody's head off. He's done plenty. There's another clip I looked at. He said, "That was forward, that Campbell, you dickhead." Stevie Wonder could have seen that. So there's been a few in rugby league that are okay. One of the funniest I saw recently was the Kate Abdo or Kate Scott with Micah Richards, Jamie Carragher, and Thierry Henry talking about Brest FC in the Champions League, and I like the shape of Brest. And
Micah Richards has got one of those laughs. It's like Jonathan Thurston's laugh. It's quite infectious.
Yeah. So that's my media watch for the week as well. So anything more that we need to touch on, John, before I go into the analysis segment?
No, I think that's it. It's fairly quiet times. Obviously, what we're 3 more sleeps in this part of the world to Christmas. So hopefully everyone has a great Christmas.
Is Santa going to come down your chimney and empty his sack?
I'll let that go through to the keeper. That one.
What, have you not got a chimney?
I don't have a chimney now, actually. No,
right, he'll have to come in. He'll have to come in your back door then. Wow. Pete O'Neill on X said, "Which team would benefit most if Super League was to be ref like the NRL to clean and speed up the ruck?" Do you have an opinion on that, John? Before I steal the limelight.
Not really. I mean, I think most teams. I mean, obviously you've got players with more speed, but I think most teams would be happy with quicker ruck. I think they obviously want a slow ruck when they're defending and want a quick ruck when they have the ball. It's not rocket science, is it?
No.
That's, it's the ruck is the key the sport, isn't it? You can't really win a game without winning the ruck and dominating the ruck. So I think it would benefit most teams. Obviously, the fitter you are and the more speed you have in your team, the better you can make use of it.
The analysis video I'm doing this week, I'm using Hull KR as an example. They exit quite specifically. They tend to wrap across the field. And I talk about how when you move the ball across the field gradually, the defence has to ensure that it stays aligned equally on both sides of the play the ball. So, for example, if there's a play the ball in the middle of the field, 13 defenders, 2 markers, 1 fullback, that'd mean there'd be 10 in the defensive line. Play the ball in the centre of the field, you'd have 5 on one side, 5 on the other in your front line. And when a team like Hull KR or anybody works across the field gradually with their carries, either from the ruck or with halves getting involved to move it a little bit wider, a team has to shift laterally in defence and get their numbers right. And quite often, defences can get this wrong. And I'm showing on this analysis video that I'm going to play soon how there are opportunities that pop up on the field as a result. Now, in terms of the ruck speed that Pete O'Neill asked about, obviously the faster the rucks are, the teams that will benefit will be the teams that can play the better eyes-up football, so to speak, who can look up and find space. And this is going to be one big challenge for Hull KR in the World Club Challenge, because they tend to stick to structure in these areas when they're in their own half. Brisbane Broncos tend to attack around about the halfway line. And there's a good reason for that. So when you're defending, so if you imagine you're in a defensive side, John, or viewers or listeners, imagine you're in a defensive side. When the opposition are trying to exit out of their own try line, so 10 metres, 20 metres, 30 metres out, obviously our defence is going to lift and do everything they can to keep them in that 10, 20 or 30 metres, isn't it? We're going to be on red alert. We're going to try and keep them there. Quite often the referee gives a penalty and relieves everything. And at the other end of the field, when you're close to conceding a try and you're close to your own try line, you're going to be on red alert defensively because one slip up and you concede a try. In between those two areas, they have this no man's land. And this is quite often, John, where teams have a little snooze in defence. And players, if they don't think the ball is coming on one side of the field, they'll just relax a little bit. They won't move up in a line. They won't be alert. And Brisbane Broncos are a good side actually attacking in this area, staying in some form of shape, being alert and just looking for the space that exists. And then in this video, I'm showing some of the space that can exist, John. So I hope you'll enjoy it with me and all the other viewers and listeners. Before I go into the analysis video, please let me remind you of the Rugby League coach services and programs that are on offer for coaches and clubs all around the Rugby League world. You can access what we have to offer right now by going to rugbyleaguecoach.com.au/shop, and you can get immediate access to the biggest rugby league coaching resource that is online in the world for yourself as a coach, or if you're at a club and you want to look after all your coaches, there's options there too. Our flagship program is the Coach Mentor program and also the Club Coach Mentor program. I'm a coach who's worked at NRL clubs, World Cups and at elite high schools in Australia, and I've done this for over a quarter of a century. The Coach Mentor program is in its 4th year in 2026, and in the first 3 years we've had 8 grand final wins, 11 of our teams were competition runners-up, 92% of our teams were in the top 4 of their competition, and there's been 100% improvement. And that's basically just the coaches that we mentored individually who wanted the Coach Mentor program themselves. It doesn't include all the clubs that we've helped. So to find everything you can on the Coach Mentor program, please go to rugbyleaguecoach.com.au/Coach Mentor. As I said earlier, Hull KR in the white and red have a very specific kind of exit strategy. They tend to move the ball across the field. So most teams at this point will tend to target the middle of the field and target forwards in the middle of the field, if you like. Hull KR don't. What they do is move gradually across the field with one-pass plays most of the time. So as you can see, JWH has taken the ball to what would be the middle of the field, and instead of going down the middle of the field, Hull KR keep going across the field. This is footage from the opening set of the Rugby League Challenge Cup final of 2025. Now, what I want you to see here is the Warrington defence, how compressed it is and how short it is on the open side, if you like. They've loaded their defence up on the short side, and this is what I was talking to John about in terms of the 5-and-5 defensive system. Here it's 6-and-3, which is fine, but it does look heavily... 7-and-3, my apologies. It does look heavily manned down the short side for something that is clearly coming open on the open side. And if you look at where the green grass and fresh air is, Hull KR have got that just under the Betfred logo there. Now, not for 1 minute am I suggesting in the first set of the game any team or even Hull KR should try and isolate that space. They should probably settle into a big game like this. But it's good to be aware of it, and it's good to understand what this kind of set can achieve. Let's have a look at some more, and let's see if the same thing happens. This is the opening set of the Super League Grand Final. So a few months later, this is for the championship title as opposed to a knockout trophy. Hull KR, as I've said, and they'll do this in the World Club Challenge, I have no doubt they will work across the field. So again, this is an opportunity for them to go down the middle and just pound the middle of the field, if you like. This is almost a carbon copy of what we saw in the last clip, isn't it? And look at the Wigan defence there. It was still very short on the right side at the bottom of the screen as we looked. You can see there, if this was later in the game, there's plenty of attacking opportunities for Hull KR, because of the way they've moved the ball across the field gradually. Now, Brisbane Broncos are brilliant at this. So this is the area of the field I'm talking about, the middle no man's land, if you like, where defenders aren't on edge and worried about conceding points. You can tell by the body language of the Wigan defenders there. They weren't concerned about the ball going out wide, and quite often defenders will have a snooze or they'll be left short. Another set from the Challenge Cup final, a bit deeper into the game, and let's see if Hull KR have some kind of attack on the back of this. So we're in 15 minutes into the Challenge Cup. I would say they're a bit more central in their approach here and are getting across the field a little bit slower. That said, they have now reached the opposite scrum line from where they started. Let's see what the defence looks like. Let's see what they do. It goes to a kick chase, but once again the Warrington defence is short. Later in the game, in the second half, once again, Hull KR are going to wrap across the field. They've got themselves to the opposite scrum line to the one that they started on, and instead of looking at the space, they just take another carry. Now again, everything's game situational, but one thing you will have noticed is Jez Litton getting excited there, and one thing that wrapping across the field like this does is it makes your defenders move laterally. So if we watch a cluster of Warrington defenders here, they will soon have to move up, across, so up our screen, and then back to the Betfred logo. And then the next play, they'll move up and across and back to above the Betfred logo. And it moves defenders laterally, and that gives opportunities for people like Jez Litton or other players like Mikey Lewis with good foot speed and good agility, a great opportunity to target defenders that have been worked over laterally. And I think this is why Coach Willie Peters likes his team to move the ball across the field like this. So this is later in the game, 72 minutes on the clock. Let's see what Hull KR do on the back of this. They sneak down the short side. Now, they're in a position where they need to try and find a try here, and I'm arguing they probably need to do a little bit more of this throughout the game against the Brisbane Broncos. Here's another screenshot from the Super League Grand Final. This happens all the time. When you move the ball across the field, defences struggle to number up, and Brisbane are fantastic at exploiting this, and basically Hull KR's defenders are going to have to be on red alert wherever they are on the field. Here, Hull KR attack, and I would say they've got a very big overlap there. If they were in better shape, they'd be able to exploit it, and instead they get caught with the ball in field and go back towards the middle of the field. So Hull KR need to be better at that. And this is something that all people in the game, in the community game, can look for too. This is the Mackay Grand Final, Mackay in Queensland, Australia, 2025. Brothers are in the blue and white. This is the opening set of the game. They move the ball gradually across the field. They've got an excellent pack, Brothers, and they are clearly rolling across the field. Have a look at the orange defenders and how short they are on their side of the ball. So anybody at any level of the game can exploit this loophole by wrapping their sets across the field. The game seems to be obsessed with teams moving straight down the middle of the field to try and attack one half on one side or one half on the other side of the field to attack that way. But I'm saying that wrapping across the field can be a really, really positive way of setting up your exit. Thank you very much for watching this analysis video. Like I said earlier, please have a look at the Rugby League Coach services and programs at rugbyleaguecoach.com.au. If you want some online programs, just tag the word shop on the end of that. If you want our Coach Mentor program for yourself or for your club, please tag on the words Coach Mentor or click on the Coach Mentor tab when you are on the website. Have a fantastic Christmas and 2026.